We will give it one more minute. All right, looks like some people are still coming in. I think we'll just get started. Welcome, everyone. We're pleased to be able to host these sessions through the Manitoba FASD Coalition and the Manitoba FASD Family Network. So this session is using attachment and circle of security to strengthen your relationship with your child or student. We're very excited to have Joanne here to present this, but before that, we have a couple housekeeping things to let people know about. So this session will be recorded. It'll be available on our website for future reference. We would like to kindly ask people to leave their video and audio off. It just makes things go a little bit smoother. If there are any questions, we would also like to ask people to record them in the chat, and then we'll address them at the end of the session for Joanne to answer. I think that's everything. So Joanne Brown is the co-coordinator of the Attachment Network of Manitoba and has been so for the last 20 years. For nearly 30 years, she has worked at New Directions Family Therapy Services. She is a social worker, a mom, a grandma, a dog owner. Joanne is interested always in the resilience of people that people demonstrate when faced with adverse situations. I'm pleased to introduce Joanne. She's a colleague and very versed in this topic. It's all yours.
All right, thank you. Wow. Hi, everybody. I'm just looking at names moving all around here. Lots of people I've come across, and that's kind of neat to see. Friendly faces, not faces. Hi, Betty. I can see Betty. So, Andrea, thank you so much for asking me to join you. I know when you first did, my first reaction was, why me? Like, I honestly don't work that much with children or adults anymore that are identified with having FASD. I have in the past, and because we have such a fabulous program at New Directions that works specifically with children identified, a lot of families don't make their way over to what we call the other side of family therapy services, and so the more we talked, you folks are experts, many of you, on FASD, and there's not a lot that I'm going to offer on that, but maybe there is a whole lot I can offer on attachment. And so that's what we sort of carved out for this hour. And as I said, there's some familiar names in here, and some of the people that I'm seeing are no stranger to attachment and have been themselves well-versed in this model, this lens for a long time, and also in the model of circle security, which we'll talk on today. So what I was going to offer up today is, first of all, an apology in advance, because as Andrea said, I'm a dog owner, but as many people have done during the pandemic, I'm working from home, and we decided, because our old dog had passed away, well, a year ago next Monday, that we would get a puppy. And so he's barking right now, and I'm going to run and let him out. And that'll take about a second and a half. And then a few minutes later, I'll have to run and let him back in again, because I'm the only one at home. So, that's, life with my office mate is not always the most tolerant little being in the world. So give me a second. I'm going to go do that. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is, let's just set the stage. Oh, he's wandering away now. I don't have to let him out. What I want to talk about today is go through some just general things about attachment for those of you that might be new to the concept. Talk a little bit about how attachment patterns are something every one of us, every human being has an attachment pattern. And they're a protective pattern. They're things that we rely on, a coping strategy we rely on in times of stress. And when we're calm, most of us look secure. When we're not calm, that's when things start to appear that kind of may be how you cope. It might be a little bit different than how that copes. So we'll talk a little bit about how those patterns show up, and what I'd love to do, and I don't know if we'll be able to do, I kind of want to try and do it, is as I talk about ways in which children, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about, adults and how we may show our attachment patterns later in life. But if you're hearing things, what I'd love to do is kind of get a little bit of a discussion going. And I know that's kind of hard. All of you are on mute, so you'd have to unmute and speak, because I think it's going to be really tough. Andrea's agreed to be the go-between here if there's questions, and she'll interrupt me and read those out. And but I think it's going to be really weird and tough for Andrea to kind of keep up with people and just typing up things. So I'm going to ask everybody when we get to that part, if you just unmute and kind of just speak. And I know on Zoom sometimes when two people are speaking at the same time, it kind of sounds a little wobbly, but we'll try and see if this will work. And then talk a little bit about the circle of security model, and then go into just some concepts again about attachment as we end. If there's, like I said, if there's questions or things that you want to make sure that I roll into this, I'm prepared to kind of go sideways with this if people have something really specific they want to ask. And so type that away, and Andrea will just interrupt me. I'm really lousy at reading when the chat comes up on the bottom and talking at the same time. I'm old and I'm pretty linear, so I'm really appreciative, Andrea, that you're going to do this for us. What I wanted to do is, as Andrea said, I've been involved with the attachment network for 20 years, of course, starting when I was 5 years old. And and right now our website's down. I was going to take you to the website, but we've had a little glitch in our website, of course. And but Andrea's program, Anita and Betty and Deborah and Melanie have put together a brochure for us that we have available on attachmentnetwork.ca for free download right now. We do print these out later on when life resumes and we're handing out pieces of paper to people safely and with confidence. We will print these and distribute them, but right now they're available for a free download. But they did such a fabulous job. We have a series of brochures called 10 Things Your Child Needs You to Know or Wants You to Know. And it started out with 10 things your baby wants you to know, 10 things your toddler, well, it's supposed to be toddler and preschooler, 10 things your school-age child, 10 things your teenager wants you to know, which my husband rebranded as 10 things your teenager doesn't want you to know. And then we came up with 10 things a foster child needs you to know. Most recently, we did 10 things your child needs you to know or wants you to know if you're co-parenting. And then we went a little bit beyond and did something that was intended more for adults, because attachment is really about relationships. And we came up with 10 things your loved one wants you to know if they're struggling with an addiction. So those are ones that we generated. We wanted very much to put out a brochure around FASD. And so we went to the experts. And so this is what our New Directions FASD program came up with. And I just love it. And we have stock photos here. I don't think we have any local ones, but they're, that relationship is the strongest, most effective way to connect with me. I need to feel valued, cared for, and important. And it helps me trust you and follow your lead, especially when things are hard. I need you to know I'm really trying my best. And due to my brain differences, I don't always remember or get it. During these times, please stay with me and be patient. So it's more about what we can do for ourselves that's going to set up a good dynamic for a child. Learn about FASD and ask for help. And so this is also, something that we were hoping folks in schools or daycares would pick up and read if they have a child that they're in their midst with FASD. I really need consistency. Having routines I can count on helps me feel secure and able to predict what comes next. This is especially helpful during daily activities like getting up in the morning, meal times, and going to bed. So the more that we can maintain some kind of consistency, the more that the child is going to just be able to sort of fall into autopilot, I guess. Busy, loud environments can be too much for my body to handle. So my sensory system will get overwhelmed and I'll need your help to manage. Often a calming break, movement, or quiet space can help me settle. And when I can't say what I need, sometimes you'll see it in my behavior. So lots of us, our first inclination with kids especially is to say, what is it? Tell me, and sometimes even as adults, we can't get the words out. We can't sort the feelings out. So even more exacerbated, I think, for folks with FASD. So take time to watch and notice me. And this will help you understand what my behavior is really saying and guide you to support me in ways that I need. I need you to stay calm, especially when I'm not. It really helps me move through my big feelings, like if I'm yelling or swearing or hitting, when you stay grounded and don't take it personally. So we often get very caught up in feeling we have to manage the outcome of the child. I have to make sure they don't hit. I have to make sure they don't swear. I have to make sure they don't throw this thing. And, I have this glib line that I've been married for so long, I've finally realized I can't change another human being. I can only really manage me. And so this is the reminder that the best work is our work. If I can manage myself, even when my kid is storming and my kid is really looking out of control, my best gift to my child is to be able to manage how I'm doing in that moment and allow that child to co-regulate from me. Let me know that you're here to help and so that I know that you're not mad at me, right? And assure me that we're going to be okay. So we're going through a storm. Can you let me know we're going to be okay? That's kind of what all of us want in the middle of a big feeling. Give me lots of opportunities to try again. So don't give up on me. Let me know you are on my team and we can work through things together. I might need more time, reminders, and support to understand. Be patient with me. It's important to involve me in plans and strategies. Ask me what I think. Isn't that nice to be asked what you think? What I need, and if I can, I'll let you know. And sometimes I might need your help to figure this out. I might need you to use less words with me. Break steps down for me. Give me extra time to switch between activities. I need to feel success and things, and that I am good at things. Help me participate in things I like and notice where my strengths are, and help me know that when I've done well, that'll build some confidence and self-esteem. So as I'm reading these, I'm realizing this is really all of us, right? This isn't just about children with FASD. These are just really good reminders for all children. Set aside time to play with me and enjoy me. I need some special time and fun times with you, and that strengthens our relationship and builds happy memories that we can share together. So again, I just really want to thank the team for putting this together. I just think that it's a lovely reminder of some of the things that, like as I said, that are good for all of us. So an attachment pattern starts at birth, and regardless of the circumstances prior to birth, and I'm get into, but I know some of you are well aware of, the contributions of other trauma around fetus as mom is pregnant and things like that, what kind of toxic environments mom is living in and things like that. But really we're thinking about attachment from the moment that the baby pops out into the world, and who does that baby get held by? And how do things that happen to that infant shape and twist and turn and change some of the experiences that child has? So we learn through the experiences that we have. And lots of times, children come into care at birth, and sadly, they don't always go to one home and remain. And so sometimes a family has been flagged. There's been concerns about alcohol abuse during pregnancy, and the decision is made that child is going to get apprehended. And we all have collections of horror stories in our not so good Hall of Fame, where, you know, I remember talking to a worker once who was moving a child who was 6 weeks old to her 4th foster home. And, you know, somebody was saying to her, wow, that's going to be really hard on this little girl. And the worker just, you know, not a mean woman, a lovely woman, just said, well, the baby's not going to remember this. Not up here, but she's going to remember it in her heart. She's definitely going to have a stress response to yet another set of caregivers and smells and sounds and environment and all of those kinds of things. And so, you know, later on in life, if you said to her, you were in 4 foster homes by the time you were 6 weeks old, she might kind of look at you and go, really? You know, but as already at 6 weeks, she's starting to develop some defense against some of these things. Some brakes are being put on in her relationships with people, where, and it's also starting to occur to her heart, if I can say it like that, that maybe the grownups around me don't have a plan for me. Maybe I'd better kind of keep my cards to my chest and shut down a little bit here, because I keep getting moved around. I keep getting handed off from place to place to place. And so there's some things that happen concurrent to whether or not that child has FASD that we do as we move kids around, that set up further attachment wounds and damage. So when all possible, if we can keep a child with, you know, as few caregivers as possible, especially in those first few months of life, children can put down some roots. What we want to make sure, of course, is that the child remains with a safe caregiver, a caregiver that can interact and do back and forth kinds of things. And so, so let's just think a little bit about how what these patterns kind of look like. So Mary Ainsworth was a researcher, psychologist in the States in the 60s, and she started to become, this is long before, parenting is an industry now. I'm part of an industry. And you can walk into a bookstore and there's not just a couple of books on parenting. I really feel for moms and dads nowadays, because it's overwhelming how to be a good consumer. There's sections, vast sections. Maybe sometimes some of the biggest sections in a bookstore is devoted to parenting. So it's a big, big industry. And, but at the time in the 60s, it wasn't. And so Mary was kind of doing some pioneering research as to what are the ingredients that go into making a successful kid, and how come that kid turns out okay, goes on in life to turn out okay. And this kid over here really stumbles and stutters and doesn't quite get out of the gate. And so what's going on at home? And don't forget, in the 60s, we didn't also yet have a real defined daycare system. And so, so most of the time children were at home. So what are the parental contributions that are setting up those kinds of successes or not? And so as she studied parents to figure out what are the ways in which parents are looking after children, she came up with 3 very distinct patterns. And she just wanted to give those letters of the alphabet no value. And people took her letters and kind of added some words to them. So she saw this as a continuum. And in the middle was balanced, B, the letter B, and people called it balanced, and now we call it secure. But she also saw 2, what she called less than whole patterns that are on either ends of this continuum. And they are the letter A, which people then called avoidant. And at the other end of the spectrum was this very weird word. I wish I'd come up with a better term, ambivalent resistant. And, you know, nobody can get their brain around what that is, but that was words that somebody put to the letter C. And then later on in the 70s, child welfare got organized a little bit differently in North America. And we were apprehending children across the continent whose very parent, the person who was supposed to nurture and protect them, had harmed them. And so prior to that, there were kids in care, but it was more due to parents dying or being institutionalized or some way of not being able to just simply be present. And so now we were taking children from homes because we had assessed that they were being harmed in the home. And so they had this cohort of children that they could study and looked at some of the ingredients that were going into their care and saw some very distinct things. And so the next letter, the alphabet, letter D, these kids got a designation that was very unique to them about disorganized attachment. Within the next decade or so, we started to look at another subset of parents that are kind of not harming their children, but are harming their children, if I can make any sense out of this. So they're not able to stand up to the bigness of the child's emotion. These folks often form the biggest part of my caseload. Parents who will say stuff like, "Oh gosh, I'll do anything to avoid a meltdown." And so they're very worried about their children. They want their children to be like a peer in the family, so they don't have sort of that hierarchy structure of mom and dad at the top or grandma and grandpa at the top, however it works. And so they have this inability to kind of take charge with their children, and that goes into all sorts of facets of their world. And so what the child kind of experiences, believe it or not, is the same thing that the child that was being abused by their parent loses faith in their parent. The child that can't be protected by their parent also starts to lose faith in their parent. And so this is another continuation of disorganized attachment. So a way to think a little bit about these patterns, because while I've worked on the periphery of child welfare and in child welfare for my entire career, I've yet to come across a parent who's deliberately set out to harm their kid. I think every parent I've ever worked with has really, really wanted the best for their kids, but man, life gets in the way. Habits get in the way. Things we don't even know that we're doing that harm our kids get in the way. And I've certainly worked with parents who were pregnant and have said, man, I was doing a high-risk lifestyle, and they've quit drinking as soon as they found out they were pregnant. Often that's toward the end of the first trimester. I've worked with parents who've used throughout their whole pregnancy. I've worked with parents who've gone back to abusing drugs and alcohol once they had their baby. The whole gamut, but never, ever have I come across a parent that sat down and said, man, I'm going to really put the screws to this kid. So people are in pain, and they do a lot of things to protect themselves, sometimes, unfortunately, at the expense of the well-being of their child as they're trying to protect themselves from their pain. We know this. I'm singing to the choir here with this stuff. But if an attachment pattern is something we rely on when we're stressed or hurt or worried or scared, or any kind of big feeling comes along, and we cope with that, a way to think about how we express that would be to see how children function when they're, say, hurt. And so if we had a collection of kids, and let's say it was a really nice day, and we bundled up 4 kids, one of each of these patterns, and their parent. And we went off to a big park that had a big play structure, and these kids are going to take turns sort of falling to the ground and crashing and getting a little hurt. I've never obviously put a kid through this, but what if it happened? And the parents are sort of off to the side. And the parent being there is important, because an attachment pattern is a relational pattern. It's the thing between you and I. And it's also a template, the thing that goes on between a kid and their primary people at home. I say mom and dad. I get that there's 2 mom families, 1 mom families, 2 dad families, 1 dad families. There's foster families, there's grandparent families, there's a whole whack of different kinds of families. And I'm just gonna say mom or dad as a shortcut. I'm not meaning to exclude anybody. But that forms a template of blueprint for how that child's going to be with all the other adults. And I know in our grown-up lives, we may have a friend who your friend is dating a little bit, and you say, man, you keep kind of fallen for your dad, you know, or you keep marrying your mother or whatever, right? Like, I mean, all of us have said that at some point to somebody. And so part of that, there's some truth in that that these patterns we have, we go back to what's familiar, we go back to what we know. And so as you take a child out of home and you place them in another home, or you place them in school, or you place them in daycare, they trot along with this little invisible backpack that has their attachment pattern in it. And they're going to come into school and daycare expecting, or into foster care, expecting those adults to behave toward them the way the adults at home were behaving toward them. And they're going to fall in line accordingly. That's the structure of the relationship. Now, we know kids have this tremendous capacity to change. It's kind of why I get up and go to work every day, because this is the most exciting part of our work. And so we can change an attachment pattern. And that's compelling stuff. And we know that even when children have lived in damaging situations, that when we present healthy relationships and healthy caregiving patterns, these kids respond and start to look really, really healthy. And we also know the opposite can happen. So our best thought is always try to present what a secure caregiver should be presenting to a child. And the more we learn about secure, the better we can prepare ourselves to present secure. And that means that we can look after any child, because this is more about me, how I manage me. So, and we'll talk about that as we go through this. So let's just say I have this big play structure, and this first kid who I say to you guys, this kid has a secure attachment to mom or dad. Mom or dad are there, falls to the ground, schmucks. And the very first thing we'd expect that kiddo to do is look around for mom or dad, signal them, maybe cry for them, maybe go to them, depending how hard they're hurt. And the function of the cry, don't forget, is it's not a sign of weakness. It's an alert system. It's a functioning alarm bell that we have inside of us. And as the parent gets that bat signal and the parent comes together with the kid, and really attachment is a study of adult and child coming together. Does it fit good? Does it kind of fit good, or does it just didn't even fit? And secure fits good. So as horrific as this was to watch, what we're watching is resolution. And this parent comes together and the kid will stop crying, because the function of the cry was to let them know I needed them. They got the message, and then they get to work on taking care of the kid and making that kid feel safe again. And so it might be taking care of a wound or an injury, and it might be the embarrassment of falling in front of people. It might be the fear of, now I got to go up in that play structure and try it again. And I don't know how that's going to be. So this is a whole package that goes on, and skilled, confident parents just kind of roll with that and do it. And the kid just, with what's so compelling about this is children don't have to stop and go, I'm really not feeling good right now. That was scary. I wonder what I should do. It's so automatic. It's automatic. And so there's this belief installed in that child that my mom or my dad are going to want to help me. They're going to be able to help me. And I got to share this with them. I've got to share this with them. I'm not in this alone. I am, you can hear my dog. I'm sorry. He's in love with my moccasins. And so right now my feet are taking a beating because he's eating my ankles and my moccasins. So yes, I've learned an awful lot about attachment from animals. The next kid up who has this avoidant attachment doesn't look so great when they fall, because what they probably wind up doing is the fall may have been just as horrific as the first kiddo. And we're watching that and we're kind of, the child will maybe just get up, dust themselves off and go back at the play structure. So they don't call out for their parent. And so we might be standing with their parent and you might kind of go, I think that was your kid over there. And the parent has some way of understanding this is this limited relationship that they have. And so they'll say to you, oh, he's always like that. He's just got a high pain tolerance. Oh, he's fine. He's fine. And I mean, how many of us have, been to sports? I remember a family when my son played football, and this happened often with them, and they kind of just, oh, you're all right, get back in there, Again, not mean people, not cold-hearted people, but avoidant people. And so this child has learned, I can't stress the system, because the function of an attachment pattern is I got to stay in relationship with my pack leader. I can't be left out of the pack, because there's no such thing as a kid alone. So it's important to kids to be part of the pack. So I'm doing something here by, I don't know it up here, but I know it in here, that my parent can't handle these demands for intimacy. So if the kid broke their leg, I have every bit of faith the parent would figure out how to get them, off to the hospital and do the instrumental things. But if you chatted with an ER nurse, they might say to you, there was something a little bit off about that family. They were on their phone quite a bit, or they were down at the Tim Hortons a fair amount or something. You'd have a story of some distance, right? And if you talk to the parents about that, it was, well, I just thought I'd get a coffee. Like again, no parent deliberately sets out to do these things. But this child has experienced, lots of signals back from mom or dad. We can code these kids as young as 6 months of age, where they've already internalized, this is the way it works in our family. This is the way it's going to work between you and I. I'll do a limited amount of intimacy with you, but I can't do the full Monty. And I've sat with families, and I don't use this terminology, but if I ever did, and I remember doing it with a couple of people, and I'll bring up the word avoidant, and they're like, no, because this is the way it is. In my mind, this is the way it is. So when we take a step back and we see it compared to what is secure, it's different. So this child is letting the parent off the emotional hook by trying to take on more pain for themselves. If you're a secondary caregiver for a child like this, don't let them off the hook that easy. Present secure. And so we go to these kiddos, and we would do what a secure parent would do. We'd arrive, we'd go, are you okay? The kid's going to go, I'm fine. And you're going to come here. I just want to take a look. And we're going to coax them down and give them a re-experience of something a little more intimate. Now, you won't get that close to them. You're not going to be able to pick them up and hug them necessarily, but you can maybe say, let me just take a look at your leg. I think you're kind of injured. And while you're looking at their leg, you look up at them and you have a little bit of eye contact and a little bit of maybe some humor or something like that, just to kind of help them feel a little less tense and a little more adjusted to some of this sudden invasion of intimacy, because you're not dangerous. If you're a dangerous person, don't try this, but I believe you're probably not. So we're going to incrementally shift this kid with every time they have a difficult moment, and so that's how we start to help this child make a different kind of a pattern with another caregiver. And if I'm working with a parent and they're interested in this stuff, we help the parents start to present secure, and that's tough. It's tough for parents to play against the grain, right? Parents or foster parents, and so the child can start to experience and practice a little bit of a bigger range of having emotions taken care of. One of the saddest things, because I, in my job, go into daycare all the time, and it's so hard for these kids to trust that an adult can look after them when they're hurt. They run away, they hide in their cubby, they do all sorts of things, and you can see how difficult it is for a little kid to be trying to manage some kind of distress or worry or pain. And then somebody shows up and says, are you okay? And they go, leave me alone. And then the adult turns away and leaves them alone. Every time we do that, we think we're being the polite Canadian, but what we're really doing is reinforcing for this child, I can only go so far with you. I'm going to let you tell me how to care for you. That's really scary. So we want to nudge closer and give this child an experience of being fully cared for by somebody who can be as close to secure as possible. As I said, this continuum has this weird phrase at the other end, ambivalent resistant. And these kids, often there's a lot of drama. So in my little playground example, they may not fall all that hard, but it feels like all hell breaks loose. And so it's tough to look after them. And there's always a big disruption going on. And when we look at what's going on in homes of these kids, we see that there's some pretty good caregiving. The problem with it is that it's administered in not, what's the word I'm looking for? The regular dosage of care isn't there. So it's interrupted often by things of stress that mums or dads get involved in. Phones are one of the biggest contributors to this now. Devices, parents that are on devices constantly. It's hard for parents to disengage. I know that the pandemic has made that even bigger for all of us. Our brains can't handle, full articles to read any longer. We can only read headlines on things. And we're twitching, and, have you ever stood in an elevator and not had a person next to you pull out their phone? I mean, I can't remember the last time that's ever happened. So just even brief encounters like that, people are having to disengage, having to put up, the shield that keeps me from you. And so if a kid needs a parent, and I will often say children need parents more than they need to breathe air, healthy parents. So if I need you, mom or dad, but you're kind of caught up in devices, or you're caught up in some other big stresses at home, or you're just sort of preoccupied with things, I got to get that attention focused on me. And kids do believe that they are the center of the universe. I want them to believe that they're the center of the universe, and they get to be there for quite a long time. But if I have to compete with that thing called a phone or video game or cooking or whatever's going on, I got to become really big. And so one of the things that I might start to do is hit my brother, or scream, or just not eat dinner, or whatever gets me seen. And it backfires on kids, right? Because then we get mad at them. But it's a way to kind of grab at some attention. And the way to get ahead of some of these kids is to be dosing them with regular bouts of attention. I think about, antibiotics, and you get a bottle of antibiotics, maybe there's 40 pills in there, and it's good stuff. So somebody's vouching for this stuff, right? A guy down the street or my office mate took some antibiotics, it helped them. So, you don't just open the top and pour the whole thing back in your mouth. It says on there to take them over time. So, okay, so 4 a day. Well, I don't take 4 in the morning every day. I take them throughout the day. So we spread out the dose. And by the end of the bottle, presumably we're okay again. And I want us to think about care as a dose. And it needs to be spread out enough, but delivered with enough frequency and intention that the child starts to relax and not kind of panic about where their next dose is coming from. Because these kids show up almost begging for a dose because they're not so sure. If I get one now, will I get another one later? So they'll do a lot of things to kind of keep your attention. Some of those things with little kids can be the shaggy dog story. They'll start telling you something, and all of a sudden it's 10 minutes later and there's no point yet. And other things can be the million questions. And if you find yourself being the polite Canadian and just answering every single question, you never get ahead of it, because what is really happening here is this child is anxious. They're anxious about not the things they're asking you about. They're anxious about what's going on between you and I. And if I stop asking you questions, you're going to go off and get back involved in something else. So we want to acknowledge the feeling that's coming a kid and let them know, not through telling them, but through experience. I will get around to you. I will come to you. I will be part of you in a regular way. The kids that have this disorganized attachment have really, the first 3 patterns, the effort for the child is, how do I stay in relationship with this wonderful person? How do I stay in relationship with this caregiver of mine? For kids with disorganized attachment, how do I stay out of relationship? Because that stuff, being involved with my parent there, was harmful to me. So now how do I stay out of relationship? How do I start running the show? How do I stay in charge? Because I can't trust the grownups that I've had to safely, kindly look after me. So these are terribly challenging children to look after, because you're trying to insert yourself as their caregiver, or their teacher, or their whatever role you play with them. And they're afraid of you, or afraid that you are afraid of them. Does that make sense? Of their bigness. And so again, rather than try to figure out what pattern this kid is, all I can do is manage me. So if I see a child resist me and I know I'm a safe individual, I have to keep not convincing this child with words, but taking care of this child with actions in a way that makes this child start to reprogram the experiences that they've had to realize that with me, they're going to be safe. And that we twist and bend and chip away at that over time, and it starts to work. I don't believe in what I've observed that children with FASD require anything different than that. I'm not going to get into these studies, but a few colleagues in town here have used attachment-based models with children with FASD, whether they were in foster care or with bio families, and have, by the time these kids are in relationship with caregivers that are presenting secure to them, these children don't often look so FASD to us. If they're in a daycare or a school and you walk in, you're not going to pick that kid out of the crowd, you know, and before there's some behaviors in that child that were more of a function of the attachment pattern and perhaps less a function of the FASD. So it's not that we're curing FASD, but we're doing a whole lot to settle this child's neurology down and help them start to feel safe and feel like they're in a trusting relationship with the caregivers that they have. So that's the compelling part of it for me. I guess the part that I wanted, and I'm looking at the time here, but the part that I wanted to sort of throw open is if you people have any examples of ways in which you've seen kids behave, and I say kids, but I mean this stuff follows us through life. We don't just stop an attachment pattern when we turn 18. We know that there's been a lot of studies replicated where children's attachment pattern at roughly 12 to 18 months of life is exactly the same attachment pattern when they're 80 or 90 years old, unless they've experienced trauma or healing. Those two things move us in and out of health. So that's compelling. So we want to be on the side of the health, on the side of that. But if anybody has had some of these, just, unmute yourself and say a little bit about what you have observed. Or if you're wondering.
What about for a child who they seem to, my children are 14, they're twins with ARND. They seem very secure at home. It's when we're interacting with other people that are close to us, like my mom and my sister and my brother, especially with COVID, we don't see them as much as we used to. So when we do see them, I'm finding them saying very inappropriate things to get attention. I've talked to my family about just giving them attention without them asking for it. But when you're in a larger group setting, sometimes it gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. And like my son will just sit down and say, hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be a Nazi, because it gets him attention. He thinks he's funny. And then people say, oh, well, don't say that. And then it just becomes into a negative pattern. And it doesn't seem like he differentiates between positive attention and negative attention. And no matter how much time I spend like talking to him about the difference between positive and negative, we've come up with code words that he could say to me so I could help him to get the attention before he needs to say something like that. But it just seems to be hitting a wall with him.
Because if it would be so simple if we could just take a kid aside and say, hey, here's how you got to be.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not.
In fact, if that's how we learned, I'd be out of work. Most of us who work in this field would be out of work because so our livelihood actually depends on the fact that we don't learn that way. So it would be great if that could happen. I can't ever guarantee that's going to be. So what we do is give a corrective experience for him. So one of the things that we talk about in attachment is that all behavior is a form of communication. So when he's blurting that provocative kind of evocative kind of statement out, He knows in some ways that it works. It's going to get everybody's attention, right? This isn't his first rodeo. He's 14. He's been around for a while. But he's really saying to you, I'm a little dysregulated. And I don't know how to kind of be here because these people aren't my everyday people. They're people I haven't seen for a while and stuff. So his actions are telling you, I'm not feeling so safe and secure right now, even though this is grandma or auntie or whoever it is, right? So the circle of security, which I put up here, is a way for us to kind of envision where a kid is in relation to us. And our job as caregivers is to be, whether we're a full-time caregiver parent, foster parent, or whether we're a part-time caregiver of that child that we share with other people, in that we're a teacher or daycare worker or support worker. But really, the hands at the side of this circle are us as adults, and our job is to be two things: to be a secure base and a safe haven. And the circle fits for all of us all the time. This is a model we use in marriage therapy in my office. This is a model we use in, excuse me, I have the hiccups, in supervision. And it's a model we use in parenting and caregiving. So the top of the circle is a kid's exploration system. And this is innate. It's innate in all of us, but it only really comes online when we're emotionally safe and feeling connected to someone. So those two ingredients have to happen. And often I get called out to schools when they're doing their kindergarten readiness kinds of conversations, and they're looking at all these other ingredients, and really the biggest thing we can think about for children, schools are set up to have kids come in and be able to self-regulate. If they can't, that's where everything starts to go off the rails. And FASD kids sometimes have a lot of trouble self-regulating. So we put a lot of, kind of plans in. One of the plans that's invisible, that isn't necessarily a strategy, it's a way of being with a kid, is an attachment model. So emotionally connecting with that kid, and then taking their emotional temperature. So if that child is not calm, my first order of business is to help them get calm. And so when your child is saying these provocative or evocative kinds of things, that's a hint that he's not calm. And he may look calm. A lot of us have this nice little way of kind of sifting through life, and it's not like we're off the rails, but I have this other little saying that I want to put on a t-shirt and sell it. Calm kids don't do stupid things. So when kids are doing some bold, kind of provocative, evocative, kind of dumb things, that's a great little hint that they're not calm right now. And so therefore they're not able to be on the top of the circle where I can have an explanation with them, where I can talk to them about something, where their brain is open to learning and receiving information. They're on the bottom of the circle. And what they really need from me at that moment is a safe haven. So sometimes in your example, if you kind of name it, we say name it to tame it. So I know we don't see these people often. Come and sit by me and, just kind of hang out here, and we'll just be with grandma and, and he might kind of say these kind of goofball things, but you've sort of tried to bring him in under your wing and say, I'm going to kind of just keep you here because this might be a little awkward today. We haven't seen them for a while. It might be a little unfamiliar. And so I'm not expecting him to perform, but I'm saying to him, I'm going to protect you. So the top of the circle is where we have, as I said, our calmer brain ready to engage in play or learning. And the bottom of the circle is when that's sort of shut off and bigger feelings come in its place. And the needs that kids have are universal throughout life and throughout ability. And those are in those boxes there. And most of the time, I'd say that the struggles a lot of us have is on the bottom of the circle when a kid is worked up, because we kind of envision it like if a child, hurts their knee, they often come and show you that they've hurt their knee. But when they're angry, they don't come and say, I'm angry. I'm really upset about something that happened, and I just think I need to sit and talk to you for a moment. That would be so lovely. Adults don't even do that, for heaven's sakes. And so instead of coming to us, they show us through their behavior, again, behavior is communication, some of the things that are going on for them. So they'll come out with an outburst, or they'll throw, or they'll hit, or they'll do something, or swear, or, you know, whatever. And rather than get caught up in trying to manage this behavior, this irritating, embarrassing behavior, we want to, the real traction is to take care of the emotion that's underneath that behavior.
See,
And
I honestly feel like if for like in my case, my children just want to be relevant. They want to be part of conversations, and they just are having a hard time with like becoming like at the point of being like an adult, you know, like it's usually with adults that they do this. And it seems like they just don't know how to interact. And I don't know for sure, but I'm working on it, and it's very, very new, because I honestly think COVID has made this really relevant for us, because we don't see anybody anymore.
yeah, our practice is gone, right?
So when they do see people, it's like they have to be as obnoxious as possible to get the attention. Like I don't know if it's about attachment or anything like that, or if it's just not.
It's probably about discomfort, because I'm out of practice at being with this person. I used to be maybe in more of a groove with that person, and now I'm not. You know, and so this is code for I'm a little squeamish right now. I'm a little unsure. And again, that naming it to tame it really helps settle some kids down. So the more that we help them understand it. So I'm not going to go through this whole circle now, because I can see it's about 10 to 1. And but it's, you know, there's a number of folks all throughout the province that are skilled and trained in this. And if it is something that people are interested in learning more about, I think it's a terrific program. I've been bathing in Circle of Security for nearly 20 years as well. And I just, you know, it informs every relationship I have. I'm always thinking about whether it's a client that's coming to see me, or my own kids or my grandkids, I'm thinking about, you know, are they on the top of the circle right now? Are they looking calm enough? Then I have this set of needs to meet. And if they're not calm enough, I've got some other set of needs that I have to meet at the bottom. And the more that I do that, the more that, because all I can manage is me. I can't change how my kid or my client or my anybody is going to be, and how they're going to act. I can only manage how I'm going to be for them. And so we have this mantra about being bigger and wiser and stronger and kind, and following those needs. Sometimes we have to step in and take charge. And some of the principles, you know, and I'm thinking more about this being, you know, work that we're doing here, whether it's work at home or whether it's work professionally, is to become curious about the other. And so be, as you're saying in your question, you know, what's going on for my kid right now? And so I want to kind of pause for a second and lean in and think a little bit. And how do I manage me to look authentic to them? How do I, because it's embarrassing, some of the things our kids do, and annoying some of the things that our kids do. So how can I park some of my reactions so that I can be present and available to this child? Delight is a giant component of an attachment-based model of being in relationship with people, because it's what's on my face. And children really are dependent on faces. And this is one of the reasons that in the beginning of the school year, masks were not being worn by teachers in the lower grades, because there was a belief that kids really needed to read faces. And so there was a lot of debate in the world about when we take away a good chunk of the face, what's a kid relying on for cues to let them know how that individual is. The daycare that my granddaughter goes to, it was so funny when my daughter had her third kid in September. I was taking our little 3-year-old granddaughter back and forth to daycare, and they know what I do for a living, and they're well informed with this. And they had done an experiment that day in the infant rooms where they wore masks and walked around and didn't smile or did smile, and the kids were able to still read, because there's enough of the face peeking up above that mask, and the kids are paying attention to how our eyes are, and the kids reliably could tell when people were smiling and happy and versus when they were upset or kind of blank faced. So, and we all get a bit of a neurological reaction to moments like that. If someone delights in us, we get a feeling of excitement in our body, and it comes out hormonally in a release of dopamine in our brain. That happens right at infancy. We're hardwired for this stuff. We read faces from the very beginning, and we comb our parents' face to see, are you delighting in me? And if you are, I'm going to release dopamine. It's a soothing hormone. And if you're not delighting in me because you're blank-faced, I'm going to assume that you're angry. Blank is read as angry until kids are around 12. FASD kids probably a lot longer. And so I'm going to default to you being angry, and that's going to release cortisol in my brain and cortisol, and it's going to cause some stress. It's going to ramp me up. It's going to make me expect something awful. Now, add to that, if a child has been traumatized further postnatally, then they're not reading a blank face as an angry face. They're reading both of those as dangerous. So delight isn't good job, high five. That's nothing. Delight is what I show on my face. My son's a server. He makes a ridiculous amount of money because he's charming. People open up their wallet and leave him a lot of money when they leave. So delight stays with us all through parts of our life. And of course, again, preaching to the choir here, the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. So the things that we say, the way that we convey attention to the child lets them know who they are. I'm just going to get through a couple of these here, looking at the time. So part of what we want to do as caregivers of any kind of kid is to show up with intentionality rather than, again, sometimes when we are unsure about a child because of maybe this is a child, and I know I'm making sweeping assumptions here that I certainly don't mean to suggest all FASD children are in care or that all FASD children have moved from one foster home to another. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes we are interfacing with a child that we haven't had experience with before. And we need to be accountable for ourselves, not so much for what the child is up to, but for what we're doing. So we want to meet that child with great intentionality and remind ourselves that we're necessary to their development and to see ourselves as being part of how they're going to progress forward in the world. That should be a given, but it isn't. Helping kids, and I think they did such a great job with that brochure and delineating this piece here. Again, it isn't teaching. If we could just tell people how to be, man, that would be so simple, but we really have to facilitate it and set up things that are going to help a person through a moment rather than tell them how to be getting through a moment. We pull them through, we get them through. So a very active kind of a process. Often when we're thinking about kids that have had a complicated background, one of the things that we drop first, sadly, is joy. And our job is to create joy. Our job is to set the tone as adults. Joy isn't something we often talk a lot about. I know in my work, I live, hearing the awful stories, the sad stories, the heartbreaking stories from folks. And I love it when we can just kind of practice joy and just have some relief. We have to be in charge of a child's emotions, partly because they're on an apprenticeship at having feelings. So they're going to make a ton of mistakes. But that's sort of the agreement with being the hands in the circle of security diagram is I'm going to manage your feelings with you until you're able to manage them on your own. And a client of mine brought this poster into me one day when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions. It's our job to share our calm and not join their chaos. And yet we do. We all know this in our heads, and yet often in practice, what we wind up doing is kind of getting freaked out by their freak out. And so our job is to sort of reflect on that and step back a little bit, take care of ourselves so that we can take care of the child. And this is the other one that it's not our job to stop a kid from having a tantrum. And this comes up the more times we have children having big emotions, that is not necessarily a failure on our part. It's an opportunity. And every time I can help a child or even an adult get through a great big emotion without me also having a great big emotion, then I've done my job. I've given them an experience of being cared for and safe and protected and have gotten through something, because all feelings have a beginning and a middle and an end. And so that's my work, is to manage me as I'm helping get them through a big feeling. I'm just looking at the time here, and it's taken us a minute past. So.
Well, thank you so much, Joanne. That was wonderful. Like, such important information. I know there's lots of thank yous here. Harmony, thank you. Always love listening to you. Anita, thank you. Blair, thank you. Kelsey, thank you. Lots of thank yous. Yeah, very important information right from the heart. Thank you again. Always good to hear you speak. Just a few things as we're finishing up here. Thank you everyone for attending. You will all be receiving a survey. We really appreciate your feedback. It helps us to guide future sessions. It's very short. Also, if you would like to become a member of the coalition, there's a membership form that will be sent out, and it can go back to coordinator@fasdcoalition.ca. Also, we have another session coming up March 19th. It will feature Momenta Outdoor Leadership Group through viewing a video, and Oliver Hill, the Director of Programs, will join us to answer questions following the videos of the individuals. More information is on our website. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good afternoon, a good weekend, and take care.
Thanks.